Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into a really wild idea about artificial intelligence, one that says the secret to consciousness isn't in silicone chips, but in the very chemistry that makes us alive. All right, so to really get into this, we're going to start with a pretty familiar human mystery. That's the perfect way to set the stage. You've probably heard about this, right? Someone loses an arm or a leg, but they can still feel it, sometimes with incredible, vivid detail, even pain. It's this incredibly strange and deeply personal thing. Now here's a really out there thought. What if that feeling isn't a phantom at all? What if you're feeling your quantum self or your biophotonic self? The idea is that this energetic map of your body is still there, completely intact, simply because you're still alive and conscious. It's a wild idea for sure, but it gets right to the heart of what we're talking about today. And that right there, that raises the big question. Is our mind just a fancy program? Or is it fundamentally tied to the specific biological hardware we're made of? You know, this whole mind-body puzzle isn't just some philosophical curiosity. It's one of the biggest roadblocks in the whole quest to build a truly conscious machine. Okay, so with that in mind, let's switch gears and see how this exact challenge plays out in the world of artificial intelligence. We're going to do this with a really famous thought experiment.
So for a long time, the big dream in AI research has been what's called strong AI. It's this theory that if you have a complex enough computer program, it can literally have a mind and consciousness in the exact same way we do. But the philosopher John Searle, he came up with this brilliant argument that really throws a wrench in that whole idea.
All right, so here's how Searle's Chinese room argument goes. Imagine a person who doesn't speak a word of Chinese locked in a room. Inside, they've got boxes and boxes of Chinese symbols and a giant rule book written in English. They start getting questions written in Chinese, slipped under the door. Now, they just follow the rule book. It tells them, if you see this symbol, send out that symbol. So they match the symbols and send out the corresponding answers. From the outside, the answers are perfect. It looks like they're having a totally fluent conversation with a native Chinese speaker.
But here's the million-dollar question. Does the room actually understand Chinese? Searle's answer is a big fat no. The person inside has no clue what they're saying. They're just shuffling symbols. The rulebook doesn't understand Chinese, and neither do the symbols themselves. See, Searle's whole point is that manipulating symbols, what we call syntax, is not the same thing as understanding their meaning, or semantics. And if that's true, then pure computation, no matter how powerful, can't create a real understanding mind.
Okay, so if just shuffling symbols around isn't enough, then what's biology's secret ingredient? What are these mysterious causal powers of the brain that Searle is talking about? Well, the answer might just be hiding in a really fundamental property of the very molecules that build us.
And that secret handshake, it's a property called molecular chirality. You can just think of it as handedness. It's like your own hands, right? They're mirror images of each other, but you can't perfectly stack one on top of the other. Well, it turns out a lot of the key molecules of life come in these two mirror image forms, a left-handed version and a right-handed version.
Now here's where things get really interesting. If you just let chemistry do its thing in a lab, you get a 50-50 mix of both left and right-handed molecules. But life? Oh no! Life is incredibly picky. Proteins are built almost exclusively from left-handed amino acids. And DNA and RNA? They're built from right-handed sugars. This isn't some random fluke. It's a non-negotiable, universal rule for pretty much all life on Earth.
And believe me, this isn't just some weird quirk of nature. It's an absolutely functional imperative. If you try to build complex molecules with a mix of left and right-handed parts, it's a disaster. It's like trying to build a zipper with teeth pointing in both directions. It just jams. The mixed molecules act as chain terminators, so you can't build long polymers like RNA. Proteins can't fold into the precise shapes they need to function. The stable double helix of DNA, only possible if all the sugars have the same handedness. So this homochirality, this selection of only one hand, is what creates order out of chaos. It's the prerequisite for turning a chemical soup into a viable medium for information and, well, life itself.
So, all of this brings us right back to the central debate raging in AI today. Is consciousness just about pure information processing, or does it need the specific causal powers of biology, starting with something as basic as this molecular handedness?
On one side of the ring, you've got pioneers like Geoffrey Hinton, one of the godfathers of AI. He's in the camp that says consciousness is substrate neutral, meaning the hardware, whether it's a brain or a computer chip, just doesn't matter.
In fact, he's even suggested that today's AIs, these large language models, already have subjective experiences, that the model literally feels the world model it's building. It's a pretty radical claim.
And that really lays out the two competing philosophies perfectly. You have computationalism, championed by folks like Hinton, which says consciousness is just an information process. The hardware doesn't matter. So the path to AGI is all about building better algorithms. Then you have biological naturalism from people like Searle, which says, hold on a second. Consciousness is an emergent biological feature. The hardware and its causal powers are absolutely essential. So for them, the path to AGI means we have to replicate biological processes.
So how do you settle a debate like that? Well, some researchers are actually trying to test it by blurring the lines between these two camps. Take a look at the Cortical Labs CL1. This thing is a biohybrid. It literally takes human neurons grown in a dish and hooks them up to a microelectrode array, a silicon chip. And get this, they've shown that this little dish of neurons can learn to play the video game Pong. And it learned faster than a conventional AI. It really shows there might be something special about how biological hardware learns and adapts.
All right, so where does this leave us? It kind of feels like we're heading in one direction, right? Chirality is essential for life, and biological hardware seems to have some special sauce. So, is that it? Is molecular chirality the missing link for creating artificial consciousness? Well, it's not quite that simple. The answer seems to be a little more subtle.
Yeah, we have to be really careful here not to fall into a classic trap, confusing correlation with causation. So it's absolutely true that all conscious life we know of is chiral. But that doesn't automatically mean that chirality causes consciousness.
The actual causal chain probably looks a lot more like this. Step 1, you need chirality. Why? Because that enables stable, predictable biochemistry. Step 2, that stable biochemistry allows for complex, self-replicating life to emerge in the first place. Step 3, over billions of years, life evolves complex nervous systems, brains. And finally, step 4, consciousness emerges from the mind-bogglingly complex organizational structure of those brains. So you see, chirality is absolutely essential, but it's the foundational step, not the direct cause. It's a key that opens the first door in a very, very long hallway.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Understanding the role of chirality doesn't give us a magic bullet for creating AI, but it does completely reframe the entire quest. The future isn't just programmed, it's grown.
Okay, so let's wrap up with the key takeaways. First, the hard problem of consciousness clearly isn't just a computation problem. Second, it seems like fundamental biological properties, things like energy efficiency, self-maintenance, all that chemical signaling, might be totally essential. And that leads to a pretty amazing idea. The most promising path to AGI might not be programming it, but growing it, in an environment that has the right biological principles baked in. This is why things like neuromorphic computing and these biohybrid systems are the next frontier. They're trying to capture the principles that biology already perfected. And for all of that, chirality was just the first essential secret handshake.
And that leaves us with a huge, fascinating question to chew on. If we ever do create a true AGI, will it be something we programmed in silicon, or will it be something we grew in a lab from the very same building blocks as life itself? It really forces us to think beyond what we know and consider that the deepest secrets of the mind might not be written in ones and zeros, but in the beautiful, complex language of chemistry.